happening? Welcome once again to YEG MS. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some of the changes I made in 2017 and how I think they worked or didn't work or whatever. First, I must apologize. This episode took a little longer to get to. I kind of had a bit of a holiday hangover. Just took some time off around Christmas, and it took me some time to re-engage with work, with just life. Last week was brutal. It was just, I've changed jobs. It's the new year, getting back into the routine after some time off. So I apologize for taking so long to get this one out. What are you gonna do? Being an unpaid podcaster, sometimes other things take priority, and I've also been, involved in finishing my basement, and because I needed to build a new office because I work from home now. But anyway, I apologize, but here's the new episode. Now, before I get into the changes I made, I need to really preface this by saying any of the stuff that I did in 2017 that I'm going to tell you about, I cannot tell you that it would work for your MS. This is entirely subjective. It's things that I've tried, but it would not be good of me to sort of promote this as, hey, look, these are the cures I found in 2017. That's not what I'm suggesting. When I decide to make a change, it's usually based on something I've read or something I've watched, and I do a little bit of additional research, and really all I'm looking for is to make sure that there's been at least some science that went into it, and that I'm not doing anything that could potentially harm myself. To see if it'll somehow impact the course of my disease in a positive way. That's all I'm really looking to do. Now, I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor. So please take what I'm about to say in that context. I'm not suggesting anyone out there try these things. I'm just letting you know some of the things that I did that, potentially I had some positive results with, negative, etc. But we're all so different, and the courses of our disease is so different that, a guy talking into the internet is not somebody you would want to rely on for advice on your own health. I mean, that's what doctors are for. And then that's what you're for. You can do the research yourself. You can go to places like PubMed and other places to read some of the academic research that's being done. You can bounce that stuff off your doctor. Maybe, you use a holistic doctor, whoever. But certainly, I'm only putting this stuff out there just to let people know things that I've tried. And then it's up to you whether or not you want to research it yourself, discuss it with your neurologist, and those sorts of things. But certainly I'm not trying to present this as, hey, here's all the stuff that cured me in 2017. And it should not be taken that way. So last spring, I'd come across it before, but I came across it again, talking about mercury tooth fillings. And I had a single filling that was probably put in when I was 8 years old, and I'm now 41. And so I went to the dentist to get it looked at, to find out if it was one of the mercury fillings. And it turned out it was. So I had coverage through work. It cost me like $200, I think, not even $200, to get it taken out. And that was in the spring. What I had read was that mercury fillings have been linked to, depending on who you talk to, all these different health conditions, MS being one of them. Now, if you speak to a non-holistic dentist, they're going to tell you that the research isn't there to suggest that mercury fillings cause MS or any of these other conditions that are listed. If you talk to a holistic dentist, they'll tell you a different story. Again, from what I said from the intro, it's important to do your own research and be comfortable. My thinking going in was, well, I've got one of these mercury fillings. I can afford the $200 to get it pulled out. Why not? Let's see what happens. So I had it pulled out, like I said, so it's probably been 8 or 9 months since I've had it out, and they refilled it with these new fillings that don't have mercury and this and that. Have I noticed any differences? I can't say that I have noticed any major differences. I mean, the places where I'm numb, my right hand and in my feet, I'm still there. Still get fatigue. So I can't say that it did anything. Now, I should say that I am happy that I no longer have mercury in my mouth. Taking a heavy metal out of your body, I don't suspect is a bad idea. But again, I haven't noticed any effects in terms of the course of my MS. It's been relatively the same. So that was one shift that I made in 2017, and I'm still happy that I did it. But I mean, if you decide to go and get your fillings checked to see if the mercury runs, and if you decide to have them out, from my experience, I wouldn't expect any miracles. Is it a good idea? I can't. That's not for me to say. For me, it was safe to get it taken out and replaced with a different one. And for me, pulling a heavy metal out of my mouth and not having that anymore seemed like a reasonable idea. But again, I didn't notice any changes in terms of my condition. One thing I've really been focusing on a lot since September has been diet. Now, for long-time listeners of the podcast, they know that I eat a paleo-style diet, similar to what you'll find with the Walls Protocol and that. And I have to say, at one point, I was a pretty militant person in terms of diet, where I thought everyone should eat paleo and everyone should do this. I've since realized, again through research and consuming information about it, that we are all so different in terms of how we react to food. For example, I could eat a half cup of white rice, and you could eat a half cup of white rice, and our insulin response could be completely different, even though we ate the identical thing. Now, the reason for the differences are many, from genetics, from sort of your mood and how much stress you're under, because stress can cause differences. There's stress, and then there's your gut biome, and your gut biome is all the good bacteria that's in your digestive system that actually aids in helping to break down food, pull out nutrients, etc., etc., etc. Now, the gut biome thing's really interesting to me, and there's a fascinating documentary on Amazon Prime if you have it, and it's called The Gut, Our Second Brain. And in this documentary, like really quickly, but I recommend if you have Amazon Prime, look it up, watch it. That's Amazon Prime Video, which is very similar to Netflix if you weren't aware. Anyway, if you have that, watch it, because what they talk about is how your digestive system is made up of neurons just like your brain. and they talk about how, um, you know, sort of the state of your digestive system and stomach can have an effect on your mood. And if your gut biome isn't healthy, you may not be able to process certain nutrients, and you may not be able to process certain foods. So what has really made, anyway, long story short, what this has all made me realize is this, for me to suggest that everyone out there who has MS would be far better served by eating a paleo diet is not, I think, entirely accurate. What I think is, and this is just what I think, this isn't factual, this is just what I think from based on what I've read. And again, I encourage you to do this research on your own. But what I think is, everyone has an ideal diet, but what that ideal diet is different for every person. So what happened in September and going into early October is one of my running partners, Paul, amazingly slimmed down. Like, it was incredible, like really a pretty incredible transformation. Not that he was fat, but he carried extra weight, and it was like overnight it was gone. And by overnight, I'm talking over the course of a few months. But in terms of weight loss, and if you're one of those people like myself that have struggled with weight their entire lives, a substantial change like that takes time and a lot of effort. So we went to go run the Grizzly Ultra Marathon in Canmore, Alberta, the long weekend, the Canadian long weekend at the beginning of October, which is the Canadian Thanksgiving. Not to confuse my American listeners, which is their Thanksgiving is November, but ours is in early October. And when we got to the run, I just said, okay, what are you doing? Like, how are you, like, are you starving? Like, I was actually a little bit concerned, because I'm thinking, like, are you trying to starve yourself? And what he had started doing was something called the ketogenic diet. Now, again, this is one of those things you look into yourself, and I doubt it would work for everyone, but it obviously worked for Paul. Long story short, but look into this. I mean, this is not the exact thing, but just kind of give you a rough idea what a ketogenic diet is. You're taking most of your calories from fat, which is completely counterintuitive to the way I grew up, because fat was a demon and that you should, have in very limited quantities. Well, they take in most of their, on ketogenic diet, you take in most of your calories from fat, and then, supplement that with some fruit, some vegetables, that kind of thing. But then you're eating very little carbs, and if any at all. And about 20 years ago, I had an opportunity to try out for a college ice hockey team, and I hadn't played competitively for about a year and a half, so I needed to really get into shape. And at that time, I went on a very low carb diet. It wouldn't be considered a ketogenic diet by any stretch of the imagination. But I did lose a bunch of weight, and then which I subsequently put on over the next 5 years, put back on. And I thought about what that diet was, and there were some similarities between it and the ketogenic diet, but it would not be a pure keto diet. And I started thinking to myself, and then around the same time, I watched that movie on Prime Video. I did some extra reading on PubMed, and I started learning about the gut biome, and I started thinking to myself, okay, so when do I feel best? And it just turned out that a couple of weeks later, I had to go for business to Calgary. And on the way there, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he had a doctor on who eats nothing but meat. And then at the same trip, I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast where he had Dr. Rhonda Patrick on. I know I'm really rambling right here, but it's all kind of pieces of the same thing, and what led to the shift. So I started thinking about, okay, so I know I feel better when I don't eat dairy, and I know I feel better, and I just kind of went through a process of elimination in my head, and so for the past, since October-ish, uh, primarily all I eat, a pretty standard meal for me is a protein, whether it be a steak, a chicken breast, chicken thighs, salmon, whatever. It's a protein on one half of the plate or one side of the plate. On the other half of the plate, it's usually just a green vegetable. And I find that when I eat that way, I feel better. Now, by feeling better, I'm not specifically referencing my MS. I'm just talking about in general. I don't feel bloated. I don't feel heavy. I don't feel, sometimes when you eat something, you kind of feel a little gross. It feels very good. So, for example, on an average day, I'll get up, I'll have a couple over easy eggs, about a quarter of an avocado, some salsa, maybe some bacon, maybe not, and sometimes some broccoli in the morning, sometimes not. But that's a pretty typical breakfast. Pretty typical supper would be, or dinner would be, like a steak and broccoli or chicken breast and kale, something like that. And I didn't really, after the Grizzly Ultra Marathon at the beginning of October, I didn't do a lot of exercise for the rest of October and through early November. I took some time off to let my body heal, my hips, my knees, because when you do an 8-hour run through the mountains, it's you beat the heck out of yourself pretty good. So even though I wasn't working out, I started losing weight dramatically. So since when I got to the Grizzly Ultra Marathon, beginning of October, my waist size of my jeans was a comfortable to a little bit loose 38 waist. Now sitting here, third week of January, whatever it is, I've gone down to a comfortable 34. So I've dropped, 2 pant sizes. And I did start exercising, and I did start exercising again in December. My wife and I started going to the gym together. But the bulk of that waist change happened while I wasn't really exercising. So that I found fascinating. And it only sort of strengthened my belief that everyone probably has an ideal diet, but they just have to discover what that is for them. And I've noticed but one of the things I have started adding back in over the last couple of weeks, because I'm lifting heavier weights now, is I still need carbohydrate. And I think the reason what it is when you lift heavy weights, because what keto does is it starts, your body naturally starts converting your own fat into energy for it to use, because you're not taking any of that carbohydrate. Well, the problem when you're lifting heavy weights is the fuel that's burned is actually the glycogen right in the muscle, and that's usually, from my understanding, is that's replaced through carbohydrates. So now once or twice a week I will take in some carbohydrate, and I found that that's really helped. So, and that's a really good segue into the last change that I've made. And this is more the last month of 2017. I used to lift weights pretty religiously when I was younger, and now I haven't for a while. And my wife was losing her workout partner because that person moved to a different city. So I said, well, I'll start going with you. And I started lifting weights again. And, that's been a really, really, really good change for me as well. It's been enjoyable. And, numerous people, including my neurologist, have told me, and my neurologist even, because I've always had a lot of muscle in my legs, and I know I've heard this other places, that muscle mass seems to correlate pretty nicely with people who live longer, who their brains stay active longer. Now, again, all this stuff's not directly tied into MS, but I just think that the stronger you are, the better you are, and the better you're going to tolerate things. So it's been a lot of fun. Now the final change I made, and again, it came late in 2017. I switched jobs, and my job that I had before was causing a lot of grief and stress in my life. And for the past month and a half, I haven't had that. And what I can say is I'm sleeping better because I'm not up nights worrying about my job, and that's had an impact. But again, I think that would have an impact on anyone, not just people with MS. It's just being able to sleep better, not live under constant stress. And that probably also impacted a little bit of the weight loss too, because having that constant stressor, can create, chemical imbalances in your body, right? So those are the changes I made in 2017. I can't say that, unfortunately, for myself and for you listening, I haven't cured MS. But I'm still living a pretty good life. So outside of that, looking into 2018, pretty cool. I'm going to be doing another really long run. It'll be later. We haven't announced any dates yet or anything yet because we have stuff to plan the route in the weekend we're going to do it. And but this year it's going to be different. It's going to be in the fall rather than spring because I need to start training. And hopefully in about 2 months here the snow will be gone and I can start training outdoors. But instead of running from Leduc to Camrose this time we're going to run from Devon to Fort Saskatchewan and go through the Edmonton River Valley. I haven't measured it yet. Best guess it's going to be 90 to 100 kilometers. I still have to map out the route and figure that out, which means it'll be my guess would be a solid 12-hour day. But the nice thing about this one, it won't be on the highway. It'll be nicer scenery up and down in trees. So I'm really excited about that, and hope to have a planning session here soon so we can get the route mapped out and I can announce more. So and if anyone listening is interested in the really long run stuff, whether they wanted to run a few kilometers during the event or volunteer or donate or whatever they want to, just shoot me an email to Sean, SEAN, at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm like I said, I'm looking forward to it. But if anybody out there is interested, it'll be great to have you along. And then tentatively for 2019, we are planning a run from Jasper to Banff, which will be roughly 240 kilometers. My guess is that's going to be a 3 to 4 day run. Again, all this money will be to raise money for MS research and that. So if you're interested, please reach out to me. Some other housekeeping stuff. I actually would have had a new episode out earlier, but I recorded one about a month and a half ago when I was on the road traveling for work in my hotel room, and the guest that I had called from. We connected from Michigan via my cell phone, but the app I downloaded to record the call just did a horrendous job. Like the audio just wasn't usable. Not that I'm a professional by any stretch of the imagination at audio to begin with, but it was not at a standard where somebody could listen to it. There was too many places where it just cut out for seconds at a time or popped, and it just did not sound good. But that guest has agreed to be on later. I just have to get that planned. So so there is an episode out there that's unusable that I didn't publish just because the sound was so bad. Other than that, if you're on Facebook, there is an Own Multiple Sclerosis page. So have a look on Facebook and like that and share it and all that jazz. Also, if you're just a listener to the podcast, I'm realizing that some people just listen to the podcast and aren't even aware that I have a website. If you're ever looking for the companion notes that I mentioned while doing these shows, you can go to ownmultiplesclerosis.com, and there is a blog post for each episode. So have a look there. Again, share it, like it, that stuff. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at ownms.com1. That's OWNMS.com, and then the number 1. I used to tweet a lot more than I do. Likely, as this really long run stuff gets ramped up, as we get further into 2018, I'll start tweeting more. I have a sort of an adversarial relationship with social media. I see it as a good way to get things out there, but unfortunately, I find there's a lot of negative stuff with it as well. People get too much in their own silos and their own echo chambers, and it never becomes about debating ideas. It just becomes about, well, if you don't think the way I do, pound sand kind of thing. So, but yeah, I probably will be starting to tweet a little bit more in the future. So anyway, that's it for me this week. We'll talk to you again real soon, and have a good one. Take care.